I had to confess to a grown man that I masturbated so I can be forgiven and go to heaven, and that was honestly the last straw for me. Former Christians that became atheists, what made you lose your faith? Going to Catholic school did it for me. They were teaching us things that contradicted what they had taught the year before, and you couldn't really ask questions. If you did, the theology teacher would yell about "that's what faith is for, don't question the Bible." What really made me disgusted was that the teachers were adamant that suicide sends your soul straight to hell because you took the life of one of God's creatures. A schoolmate had a father who took his life, and the way they handled it was horrible and basically made mental health issues a nothing burger. 3 years after the above incident, my brother took his own life, and these asshole teachers had the audacity to show up to the visitation to pay their respects. I had to walk away so I wasn't rude. The church did it for me. When I started to understand that it was a business. For profit and for power and for influence. When it started to become political. The final straw was when I started to see how much hypocrisy there is, by way of prejudice and hate. I was raised in the church, told to pray and all that. When I was little, I would pray, but nothing came of it, so I stopped. Nothing changed. When I was a bit older, my parents and I stopped going to church because we got a priest they didn't like. The church population as a whole dropped because of this guy. But those were the best times, since I now had weekends all to myself, no sitting in a stuffy building, etc. So I was happier that I wasn't having to do things I didn't enjoy, but besides that, nothing changed. Once we started going back, it was harder for me to sit there because I had tasted freedom. I started looking at it more objectively and just came to the conclusion none of it makes sense. This is doing nothing good for me mentally, and I feel like I am wasting time. So now that I've moved out and have not been to church in a long while, I feel fine. There has been no consequences to not going to church, only benefits. I'm a good person, I help where I can, etc. I don't need religion for that. But if that sends me to hell, I'm convinced then hell is the more fun place to be anyway. So whatever. For the most part, I believe that there is some higher power. Why? I don't know, because I want to believe in some kind of magic or something. Where did this higher power come from though? A further higher power? So what about him? The meaning of life is too much to think about, so I just tend to ignore it and enjoy my life in the here and now. Taking a mythology class in college, and realizing all the different religions had similar origin stories of how Earth and man were created and evolved, but the details differed based on the environment the people lived in, and how far along they were technologically. Anything science couldn't explain was the will of a higher power. Not saying higher powers couldn't exist, just realized people are killing each other because theirs is the right God, but the people don't realize that for all intents and purposes, they are all following the similar lessons and stories. I also believe religion is separate from its organization structure. I think being spiritual and believing in a higher power is okay, it has helped mankind cope with the terrifying unknown. Anybody telling you that God wants you to donate money to them so that their leader can live in a supermansion or own an airplane is a liar. Last I checked, none of that money ever gets trickled up to a deity. I started to read the Bible. Then it was gradual. First I did not believe that the God in the Bible was good and created my own personal God. Then I realized that I was making up a God and started to question if everyone else was doing the same. That's when I started questioning, but felt guilty about it and had conversations with God like, "You cannot be angry that I am questioning. If you wanted me to believe, you shouldn't have left all of this gaps and contradictions." Eventually I became an atheist. I grew up Southern Baptist. When I started getting to the age where I could think critically about things, I just started noticing some inconsistencies. Specifically, I was told that people who believed in other religions would go to hell because they followed the wrong religion. What? When religion is based a lot on where you were born, I just could not truly believe that people would be sent to hell for being born in the wrong country. I used to be very religious, although we didn't attend church every Sunday. We did go to youth a lot as kids, which was just a once-a-week thing in the evening. God came into every part of my life. I didn't meet an atheist until I was about to turn 13. We moved to a big city, away from our small rural town, and one of my new friends in my grade said he was an atheist once. My immediate thought, and subsequent question was, "Aren't you afraid you'll go to hell though?" The idea was terrifying. He replied, "I don't believe in it, so no." It blew my mind. Then later that year I realized that I'm probably gay, because of my fear of God and knowing that men must be with women. I told myself I could like men and women, That way I can admit that I'm feeling for boys what my friends felt for girls, and I still would never ever have to kiss a boy because that would be bad. I figured that God must have made me this way for a reason. It was only when I explained to one of my closer friends that I was informed this is called being bi. My poor mind was not having a great time. Soon after my friends all were told, that went absolutely terribly, a story I won't go into. But I never blamed God or anything like that. To me, I just understood that He made it so that I would have to feel these things I can't act on, which made me someone people wouldn't like, and I had to learn from it. Soon enough, through a friend I met online, I discovered another gay person like me, who had never met another gay, like me. He was close to my age and we became good friends and would see each other on the weekends. I still held on to my beliefs. But just like any straight guy at this age, 14-ish by now, exploration and young love had us kissing after a month of seeing each other, and I had never even kissed a girl. That made me feel very guilty. My first kiss was with a boy. I could feel God's disappointment. I would often stay awake at night over it. I wanted to be good but I couldn't. When we broke up after 7 months, I decided okay, I had my fling, time to get back on the right track, apologize to God and make Him proud. I got myself a girlfriend at last. Finally I was in a normal relationship, so I did my best and made an awkward fool of myself. She was a fun person and we were good friends, but I wasn't gonna cuddle her or anything. It just felt so weird, like it wasn't comfortable. It didn't come naturally to me and I just didn't feel the need to. Incidentally, at this time I was having troubles with my faith. We went to church a bit more often now. There were good priests and such on YouTube to watch, but they didn't really answer a lot of the questions I had. For example, how important are the rules in the Bible actually? Sure, Leviticus talks about homosexuality, but also eating shrimp or wearing mixed fires. Stuff no one cares about. Why don't we care about those things? Lots of stuff in the New Testament too, and Old, from prophets to Jesus, and with no obvious distinction between the stuff we take as law and the stuff we didn't. I got that different churches practice different things. I knew you could be gay and Christian, but for me it wasn't about being a part of the church, it was about what God wanted specifically. At this point I didn't trust any one church or preacher to be true. And so I read the Bible. It confused me a lot. There was a lot to take in. A lot of it seemed random to me, but I got that these were important and that I would understand someday, and most of it I didn't really absorb. But I didn't see the God I knew in there. That was difficult, but these were the days of miracles and floods. I guess I realized these were all allegories and symbols. I came out of it feeling further from an answer, but closer to God. So it's not like I did thorough analysis with cross-referencing or anything. But hey, it was good enough for me, and I decided I can be gay and Christian, as long as I am a good, kindly person. But these were modern times and I lived in a modern city. As I got more friends outside of my Christian school in a Christian neighborhood, specifically gay friends, my beliefs were questions. No one ever actually asked me to defend them or tried to poke holes in it, but their conversations and personal philosophies were intriguing, and their lack of a need for God was clear. It was only after that I started looking at the possibility of God not being real, but I didn't want God to be angry at me for looking at it. So I made a heartfelt promise to God that I would not lose faith in Him. I would simply investigate it, and I hoped with His guidance, I could find my true path to Him. And in the end, that was what actually made me atheist. The communities online, the books I read, the way it just made sense. I held on to hope of some or other creator. I still wanted to believe I had been feeling a God's presence in all my life. He felt real. I felt His pride in me. I felt His disappointment. I felt His love. Where do those feelings fit into all of this? But of course other religions feel that too. My best friend was Hindu and he had that same faith and reverence. Our other friends were Muslim, and they were especially devoted to Allah. They all felt how I did, and we can't all be right. So I don't believe in Islam, I don't in Hinduism, and I realized that I don't believe in Christianity, and that I hadn't for a long time. I had just believed in this God I had made up in my own head. And so I stopped. It was hard, and it took years to really accept that I was an atheist. But I'm so thankful I did. I still respect religious people completely. I live among Thai Buddhists now and I appreciate so much about what religion can bring to people. I don't think I know better than those who believe, it's just something I have come to accept for myself. Reading the Bible and Bible study is what started it for me. I just got frustrated because when I had questions about things in the Bible that didn't make sense, I was made to feel like I shouldn't be asking questions. That flew in the face of what I'd been taught in school about asking questions to learn and find the truth, so it really rubbed me the wrong way. When I learned about Judaism, Islam, and Hinduism in school, I realized that the only reason I was a Christian was because my parents were Christians, and their parents, etc. What made Christianity right and the other religions wrong? The more I learned, the more nonsensical religion became to me, and I realized I didn't want to believe in a God who does all the horrible things that the Christian God does in the Bible. Was heavily indoctrinated with young earth creationism as a child. Stopped believing in the literal truth of the Bible in college, when confronted with extensive evidence to the contrary. Was still very religious, with faith in the moral truth of the Bible. Got engaged to a conservative Christian in medical school, it ended badly. Realized after the fact that Christianity did nothing to prevent the emotional abuse I had suffered by the hands of my mother growing up, and my ex as an adult. In fact, faith actively facilitated it in many ways. Hence, not a reliable source of moral truth, too subject to personal interpretation. Put faith on hold. A year later, realized I was happier not going to church. About another year later, just recently, discovered my beliefs align much more cleanly with secular humanism. I stopped believing because of Santa Claus. As a kid, I wanted magic to be real. I needed it to be, and everyone told me it was, just have faith and believe in magic, and it will be real. That's apparently all it took. Finding out Santa wasn't real was a major bummer to my child self, and it literally made me question everything else I'd been told. Especially because when it came to talk of God, as everyone told me the exact same thing, have faith. Believe. Just let him into your heart. Yeah, you guys fed me the same lines about Santa, and look how that turned out. 8-year-old me just discovered skepticism. I ended up going to a Christian homeschool in my teens. I lived in Germany, and it was the only way for me to get an American education. I never stopped that discerning, questioning attitude. Eventually I just started to roll my eyes at a lot of the claims in the teachings, and the excuses of why things were the way they were, just felt like people trying to fill in the blanks. For example, nobody could provide proof God existed, and they'd just point to the Bible as proof. Just look at it. It's all the proof you need. I'd counter the Bible was written by man, and they could say anything they wanted. Oh, but God guided them to write it. So, let me get this straight, God's all-powerful, yet can't write his own book? Why does he need regular people to do it for him? Couldn't he just will it into existence like he did the 10 Commandments? And second, if God were all-powerful, wouldn't the Bible be written in a language every human could understand and didn't need to be open to interpretation? Over the years my spirituality grew less and less, all because I asked basic questions and nobody could ever give me an answer that didn't ultimately end up coming back to Santa Claus. You just have to have faith. I just started thinking, how did I happen to be born into the right religion, and the believers of other religions feel the same way as I do when praying? Also I happened to read about cargo cults, then I thought, wouldn't some people in a desert want to feel special? Wouldn't they want to be the chosen people of God? Then I realized that they are basically forcing you to believe something with no evidence or else you will suffer for the rest of eternity, and that was pretty much when I stopped believing. The funny thing is that I still attended Sunday school when I was slowly turning away from religion. After reading online about other people's experiences, I'm very glad everyone was okay with me changing my belief and we're still hanging out. One time I got into a religious debate with my Mormon relatives. I mentioned how geography is the greatest predictor of someone's religion, not divine intervention. Why can they be so sure that Muhammad isn't the prophet and Jesus is? Simple, they knew in their heart of hearts that Jesus was their savior. They could feel it. That's when I realized this debate was pointless. I was arguing using logic, pointing out the vast holes in the story. They argued using emotion, always going back to what they could feel. They couldn't comprehend how I couldn't connect to Jesus in my heart. I couldn't comprehend how they could ignore basic logical thinking. Like if God created all animals for humans to use, then why did he create mosquitoes that kill millions of people every year? It's an honest question. They would stare at me blankly and go back to their heart of hearts line. I was raised Roman Catholic and it took about 5 years for my faith to finally fizzle out to atheism. It was a slow process. It started when I was 14 and I started going to an Anglican school, and they started saving people during an assembly. Saving is the act of absolving someone of all their sins when they let Jesus into their hearts and souls. I got saved that day and I went home and told my mom and brother, and they lost it, asking me how I could do that to God, accepting a less than gracious form of worship, in their opinion, and it broke my heart. I hated myself. In hindsight, both the sectors of Christianity worship God and believe Jesus rose from the dead, but it caused this much divide and self-hatred? I also have had a very traumatic life with a lot of abuse, and if God was real, why the hell would he allow me and billions of others to be messed up? A la Stephen Fry, it's nonsense. And then me realizing that as a child from the age of 8 I had to confess to a grown man that I masturbated so he can forgive and I can go to heaven, and that was honestly the last straw for me. Obviously, the repulsive, corrupt and depraved nature of many religions through war, child abuse and slavery in the name of the divine. But also for more personal reasons, because I feel like as humans we will justify anything to ourselves just to avoid admitting that our firmly held beliefs we have had since innocence are lies. It's an extreme form of cognitive dissonance. I was plagued with guilt and shame thanks to religion, but I also lost a piece of myself that was filled with hope when I stopped believing. It's a weird abusive relationship, and that's why I couldn't fool myself any longer. Thanks for listening to Radio TTS. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell for more videos like this. Let me know what you think about religion. Are you religious, or are you an atheist? What is your conclusion and belief? Share your thoughts in the comments.